On Wednesday, Ferguson Peach's lack of productivity at Plastics Unlimited came to the attention of the foreman. At least we think it did. He stood in front of Peach at coffee break and gave him a long lecture about noofspiff, which we were pretty sure meant work. "You see?" Don challenged after the foreman had moved on to fuffle at somebody else. "If you don't smarten up and do some work, you're out of here." "You look after your noofspiff," said Ferguson, "and I'll look after mine." "You aren't doing any noofspiff," wailed Don. But Ferguson was on his way to the production computer, where the engineers waited, checking their watches and wringing their hands. On Thursday, Ferguson didn't make any bubble wands at all. Instead, he held court at the computer, typing furiously, stopping only to make rough sketches on paper. "That's it," seethed Don. "No more Mr. Nice Guy. As soon as he gets back here, he goes into the stamping machine. Some poor kid's going to get a peach fuzz bubble wand, which will keep telling him how to blow better bubbles." But Ferguson did not return. Instead, more and more people gathered at the computer to see what was going on. By coffee break, the entire engineering staff was there, and the excited babble was drowning out the stamping machines. As the morning wore on, executives trickled one by one from the offices to crowd around Ferguson, until finally Don's Uncle Harry, president of the whole company, came to investigate the goings-on. Don was turning purple. All eyes were on the screen as Ferguson deftly pounded the keyboard. Then he got up and pointed to several places around the plant. After that, the whole crowd of 30-plus people disappeared into the executive offices, taking the peach with them. 3 hours later, we were summoned to see Don's uncle. Don had a plan. "I'm going to save our jobs at all costs, Jason, so don't try to stop me. When my uncle asks what's the story here, I'm gonna nail Peach Fuzz to the wall. I'll say we hardly even know the idiot and that we only need him for the rent. Then I'll apologize like crazy, and maybe we'll get through this one alive." I was really confused. Was Ferguson about to be fired? All I could think of was my summer. Could Ferguson get another job, or would he be on the train back to Owen Sound tomorrow? Could Don and I cover the rent on just 2 salaries? Or would we be back on the train after Ferguson's to be greeted by my father and his 4 favorite words, "I told you and so"? I gritted my teeth. If that happened, there really would be a no more Peach Fuzz day. I, Jason Cardone, would throw out the first peach pit. "Donnie, where'd you find this guy?" Uncle Harry was referring to Ferguson, who was seated in a big leather chair while we stood. I could see the wheels turning in Don's head, but when he opened his mouth, only panic poured out. "He's nobody! I never met him before in my life! He's an idiot! Just some guy off the street! I'm not responsible! Don't blame me!" Harold Robb stared at his nephew. "An idiot? Why, Fergie here is the most remarkable young man it's been my pleasure to meet. I can't thank you enough for bringing him to me." Don goggled. "You're welcome." The president got up and put his hand on the Peach's shoulder. "He's a genius! He's gonna save this company millions! In all my years in business, I've never met such a gifted individual. Do you know that he could take a look at an operation and immediately see ways to improve it?" No kidding. Don and I exchanged glances. The Peach's expression didn't alter. "Which is what I brought you in here to discuss. See, part of Fergie's complete plant overhaul involves an automatic feeding system, so Plastics Unlimited doesn't need feeders anymore." It took a second or two for this to sink in. "We're fired?" I barely whispered. Don was stunned into silence. "Of course not," said Uncle Harry. "Can't run the place without my boy Fergie. But you two, well, that's business, right? Tomorrow's your last day." But you're my uncle!" gasped Don. All the more reason why you don't want any special treatment, beamed our ex-employer. Man's gotta make his own way in the world. Just look at Ferguson here. What a mind! What a mind! Don was begging now. Couldn't we be transferred to another section? Sorry, we're fully staffed, and you have the least seniority, so you have to go. But I'm family, Don whined. Nepotism has no place in business, his uncle replied. This is a tough world, Donnie. Think of how fortunate you are to learn about it at your age. The end. Not really the end, but we'll go on. Ferguson was invited to stay and have dinner with the executives, and Don and I went home. By unspoken agreement, we jammed all the Peach's clothes into a suitcase, zipped it up, and threw it out the window. Then we turned out all the lights and cranked the stereo up to 9. At 8:30, Ferguson showed up, good-natured as ever, suitcase in hand. We had no words. We just stared grim death at him. He said, sorry, and began to unpack. I blew up. Sorry? Sorry? We're obsolete thanks to you! Now what are we supposed to do? Go down to the museum and stand in a glass case marked Feeder's late 20th century? The Peach just shrugged. Don went for his throat and I had to leap between them. The important thing, I said, straining to hold them apart, is we can't let our parents find out we've been fired. Remember, the jobs were the #1 condition for this trip. Right, exclaimed Don. He shook his fist at Ferguson. If you slip up in one of your hourly letters to Mommy and mention us getting canned, our folks will freak out and drag us back home. I'll take it under advisement, murmured the Peach. But I knew Ferguson wouldn't tell. And Don's uncle was no risk. He couldn't even remember which of his sisters was Don's mother. Absolutely nobody could know we'd lost our jobs. When we went down to the deli for breakfast the next morning, we found the Toronto Star employment section spread out on the table of our booth. I looked over at Plotnick, who was behind the counter involved in the hubcap sale. What's this for? I called. The landlord looked up. Just in case you should happen to know 2 people looking for employment as of today. Yeah, well, we don't know anyone, I snapped. Was Plotnick psychic or something? Plotnick handed the hubcap customer his change. Okay, Mr. Cardone, but just remember, the first of the month is coming this weekend, and jobs for feeders are hard to come by with all the mechanization these days. I spied the ventilation duct grating right behind Plotnick's head. Mr. Plotnick, have you been listening in on us? The landlord brandished his meat fork defensively. It's my fault you gentlemen are yelling and screaming all the time? You want privacy? Try talking like a normal person. He waddled up to our booth, and I tried to picture him trussed up like a roast pig with an apple in his mouth. Okay, what'll it be? Mr. Peach, you first since you're paying the bills from now on. And by the way, congratulations on your promotion. Don was in a nasty mood. When are you gonna fix that stair? I almost killed myself this morning. Look who's talking, said Plotnick righteously. I asked you to come smash up my building. Watch where you're going. He turned to Ferguson. So, Mr. Peach, how much money do you make? I slammed my hand down on the tabletop. Mr. Plotnick, you don't ask a guy something like that. The landlord shrugged. A person's interested. 6 figures, maybe? The Peach laughed. They bumped me up $50 a week. Plotnick was insulted on Ferguson's behalf. If you hold yourself cheap, Mr. Peach, you'll get treated like a bargain. I'm not a career man, Ferguson pointed out. I'm only gonna be there for a couple of months. All the more reason you should grab fast, said Donald Trump in a greasy apron. You let me talk to your thief of a boss, and soon you'll be on Easy Street. I only charge 20%. No, thank you. But you'll be rich! You'll live in a penthouse! I pictured the 3rd floor. Why? Is the ugly man moving out? Plotnick ignored my wisecrack. Don't think only of yourself, Mr. Peach. Remember, you've got 2 unemployed bums to support. I looked over at the other bum. We'd have to find work, and fast. At Plastics Unlimited, Ferguson got paid, and Don and I got paid off. We stopped at the bank on Bathurst and put most of the money into a checking account on our 3 signatures. Our convenience cards would be sent in the mail, but the teller presented us with a checkbook on the spot. None of us had ever written checks before. We were psyched. As we left the bank, Don couldn't take his eyes off our passbook. "We've got over $1,000, he grinned. $1,000! The rent's coming up tomorrow, the Peach pointed out. $685, Don shrugged. We're rich! Let's celebrate! Before we knew it, he'd hailed a taxi, and we were headed against the traffic downtown. "Where are we going?" I asked. "Tonight is the first night of the rest of our lives as swingin' city guys," declared Mr. Wonderful grandly. "Well, I was thinking of checking to see if there was any word on the car." "You need to forget about the car for one night," advised Dawn. "We're gonna drown ourselves in loud music, colored lights, and hot babes." Ferguson laughed in his face. "Babes? Shut up, Peach Fuzz," snapped Don. "What do you know about women, besides the fact that they all agree what a geek you are? Come on, it's Friday night, let's get some action. Jason, how long's it been since you broke up with old What's-Her-Face?" I reddened. Amy Lozer, my one and only girlfriend, had ditched me in February. That was just after she made me throw away my Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue because it exploited women. Then one day I opened her locker, and there was my brother Joe, his muscles oiled, smiling out at me, Mr. February. There was even a lipstick smear on Joe's bulging biceps. I tore it into a billion pieces, and she never spoke to me again. "What about you?" I countered. "What was the logic behind you dumping Teresa last month?" "Teresa is Don's ex. She's going to have trouble deciding whether to be a high fashion model or a nuclear physicist." But Don just smiled. "That was a masterstroke. A perfect move." "How do you figure that? It doesn't even make sense." "That's the whole point," Mr. Wonderful argued smugly. "There was no reason to end it with Teresa, so when I did, what did everybody think?" "That you're stupid?" suggested Ferguson innocently. "That I've got something going for me even beyond what everybody else sees. So I've kind of traded Teresa for future considerations. And in September, I'll have my pick of any chick I want all year." "But you lost Teresa when you still like her," I protested. Don shrugged. "Let's concentrate on tonight. Now, what's the key to hooking up with a chick?" I wasn't prepared for a quiz. I guess if she thinks you're a nice person." No, interrupted Don in exasperation. "Girls say they want nice guys, but they never do." The cab stopped in front of a giant neon sign that blazed, "Club Moontricks, Toronto's premier teen club." "The first impression is the most important thing," whispered Don as we paid our admission. "So watch what you do, how you walk, what you say. Take medium-sized steps and try not to smile so much. It's better if you look like you PO'd about something. Not too much, just a little." Club Moontricks was huge, bigger than the entire Plastics Unlimited plant area. The dancing hadn't started yet because they were still serving dinner. We got a table and ordered 3 burgers. The Peach and I wanted pizza, but Mr. Wonderful insisted it would do too much damage to our breath. "As soon as a girl steps into a place like this," he told us as we sipped on our Cokes, "she divides all the guys into the Nimrods and the cool people. You haven't even said hi to her yet. It could be all over if you're in the wrong category." Ferguson signaled the waitress. "Excuse me, do you know if these napkins are made of recycled paper?" Don held his head. "If you look up Nimrod in the dictionary, there's probably a picture of Peach Fuzz." As we were eating, the place was steadily filling up. By the time the music started, it was wall-to-wall people. The beat was bone-jarring, and colored lights and lasers electrified the dance floor. If they moved a great place like this to Owen Sound, it would probably be shut down by the police. For this kind of excitement, you couldn't beat downtown Toronto. We just stood there for a long time, soaking up the atmosphere, and then Don said it was time to mingle with the ladies. Catch a rap, as he put it. But we didn't. Instead, we walked around the club while Don looked at every girl in the place. And I mean every girl. It was like he was shopping for a house. He would walk 10 feet, stop, check out the scene, walk 10 feet, stop, check out the scene. We must have circled the club 5 times that way. After about an hour, Ferguson gave up and went to the bathroom to read a book. I was dying to ask somebody to dance, but Don said no. Just watch and take notes. Who was I to argue with the guy who dumped Teresa Barstow? Finally, after all that walking and staring, he headed over to the soda bar. I guess it's not our night, I began sympathetically. Are you crazy? He gasped. I can't miss. He ordered the Moontrix Mountain, the most expensive drink in the place, a giant whipped cream-topped milkshake float that would fill a toilet bowl. Then he stuck 2 straws into the concoction and went off to share it with... who? You had to give Don credit. After carefully scouting out every female in the building, when he went after his quarry, it looked totally spontaneous. Guy sees girl, guy offers drink. He didn't even say a word. He just pushed a straw in her direction and grinned an invitation. You saw it coming, but you couldn't stop it. 2 thirsty people and a Moontrix Mountain. She lunged at her straw, Don lunged at his. There was a crack as loud as a gunshot as forehead met forehead. Don staggered back, but the girl crumpled to the floor unconscious. The Moontrix Mountain slipped out of his hand and plopped down right onto her head. There was a lot of screaming and scrambling, and suddenly Mr. Wonderful was at my elbow. I think we better get out of here, he said. I just killed that girl. You can't leave now, I raged. She's out cold. Don rubbed his brow. But when she wakes up, she's going to be mad. I grabbed him and started dragging him into the fray. We have to find out if she's okay. We pushed through the crowd of spectators to where the victim lay. Guess who was at the center of everything, directing traffic, barking orders, and applying wet towelettes to the girl's forehead? Ferguson Peach. Pretty soon she was on her feet again, although dripping with Moontrix Mountain. She cleaned her up a little, and we hustled her out for some air. Even after that vicious cocoa bump and a drenching with a giant drink, you could tell she was great looking. She was tall and slim with a really natural look to her. She didn't put on makeup with a trowel like the stripper. Also, it didn't hurt that she was wearing a mini skirt, revealing fantastic legs. We introduced ourselves, and she told us her name was Jessica Lincoln. I booted Don in the back of the leg and looked at him sternly. Yeah, he said, studying his shoes like a 4-year-old admitting he'd thrown his Tonka truck through a picture window. Sorry about... it was an accident. Don't worry, she said. I left myself open. Open? Queried the Peach. In my Taekwondo class, they teach us always to expect an attack, no matter how safe you think you may be. So, you're into martial arts? I jumped in quickly. If we ran out of conversation, she might leave, and I didn't have her phone number yet. Only a self-defense, said Jessica. There are all kinds of criminals and lunatics on the streets of this city. I don't want to become a statistic. Have you ever been mugged, I asked. That's what scares me, she admitted. I've lived in Toronto my whole life, and I've never had the slightest problem. That's good, I said. Wasn't it? It means my number could be coming up any minute, she reasoned. The law of averages is against me. Actually, the Peach began, according to probability theory. What good is probability theory when some drug-crazed maniac is ripping off your watch? She interrupted. Well, we've had kind of an incident, I said, almost proudly. My brother's car was stolen. Jessica looked triumphant. Society is one's big, smelly cesspool. You want to go out somewhere? My head snapped to attention. I'd been contemplating the cesspool when she threw out this curve. She was looking straight at Dawn. No question who she was asking. Suddenly, Mr. Wonderful was alive in the conversation. In 10 seconds, he had a taxi. Dawn, who had been ready to leave Jessica unconscious in a pool of melting milkshake, got the girl. I got, it was very nice meeting you. I hated both their guts. Hold it, said Jessica, as Dawn was about to climb into the cab beside her. What do you think you're doing? Dawn was mystified. Going with you. Not like that, you're not. Dawn surveyed himself in anxiety. Could it be that there was a flaw in the outfit he'd spent hours selecting? Your wallet's in your back pocket, exclaimed Jessica. You want to make yourself a target for a pickpocket? No way, agreed Dawn. This was the guy who refused to carry anything in his front pocket because it threw off the visual symmetry of his lower body. Not only did he move his wallet, but Ferguson and I had to move ours too. I stood fuming as they drove off. I can't believe it! Why would she go with him? Ferguson shrugged. Maybe society is a smelly cesspool. Dawn was right about one thing, I seethed. Girls really don't want nice guys. If it wasn't for us, she'd still be out cold wearing dessert. He was ready to head for Switzerland. And what do we get? Anti-pickpocket device. I pulled out my wallet and jammed it into its former position. Hey, pickpockets, looky here. It's party time. The Peach put out a sympathetic arm around my shoulder. At least we know he's safe from crime. I pity the poor sap who tries to mug her. Since July 1st was Canada Day and Plotnick refused to do business on a holiday, our rent was due the next morning. I broke in our new checkbook number 001 to Plotnick, $685. Writing checks makes a guy feel very independent. It almost made me forget my telephone call from my parents, who made boring small talk for 20 minutes, leaving long pauses so I could break down and beg them to come and take me home. I filled in this dead air by raving about Plastics Unlimited, telling them everything about the company except for the fact that Don and I didn't work there anymore. Don was still bragging about his enchanting evening with Jessica Lincoln. I was on last night and Jessica knew it. I was the perfect combination of hipness and coolness. You want to know the best part? She lives right near here, just up Bathurst. Convenient or what? Great, I mumbled without enthusiasm. Don didn't get the message. I could tell she was really impressed when I brought her a single perfect rose from this vendor on the street. She must have been devastated, put in Ferguson. She had her heart set on a bulletproof vest. Shut up, Peach Fuzz, Donald said mildly. Last night had put him in a mellow mood, and not even the peach could rile him. You're just jealous. We've got to work up on scaring up a woman for you. He looked thoughtful. There must be some boring people around. Maybe a lady professor of Stonehenge. I was determined not to show it, but my guts were churning. If Mr. Wonderful said one more word, I was going to pop him. Obviously, Jessica had no taste at all. Any idiot could see that I would treat her like a queen, and Don would treat her like a customer at the ice cream parlor. Take a number and wait, now serving number 23. I tore out the rent check. Let's go pay up. With the walk to the deli came a pleasant surprise. Plotnik had finally gotten around to having the stair fixed, and in fact, he had all the stairs fixed and a new banister installed, and carpeting. God's grandmother was flitting up and down barefoot, enjoying the new luxury. "Isn't it lovely?" "Yes, ma'am," I agreed. "I never expected Mr. Plotnik to do all this." The bill came to $319. Plotnik handed it to me, skewered on the end of his meat fork. "Wow," I said. "How much do we owe you?" "You're maybe having trouble with your eyesight, Mr. Cardone? It says $319. "Yeah, but that's for the whole job," I protested. "What's our portion?" Plotnik was patient. "A staircase is like a chain, Mr. Cardone. If one of the links is broken, the whole chain is kaput." "Then," put in Ferguson, "fixing one link would save the whole chain." "Better to get a new chain," said Plotnik evenly, "and that costs $319. I could feel my face flaming. "I won't pay!" Plotnik shrugged. "That's your privilege. And just to show you I'm a reasonable man, I'll hold off my eviction proceedings so your brother can be present in court." In Owen Sound, people like Plotnik go to jail. But in Toronto, here he was, holding all the cards. I remembered my brother's message. "Whatever you do, don't lose me this lease. Whatever you do." Even if you have to hand over $300 to this hoodlum in a greasy apron. But it was only one stair, I managed weakly. Plotnik nodded sympathetically. "Prices these days, out of sight. Your brother, also Mr. Cardone, used to say that a lot. Nice boy, big muscles. I'd miss him if he moved away." I'll say this about Plotnik. He certainly knew how to get to the heart of the matter. I looked at Ferguson and Don, who nodded. I wrote him another check, number 002, and felt even more independent. Like I was alone on a desert island surrounded by crocodiles. With 2 of us unemployed, and Ferguson's next paycheck 6.5 long days away, we were left with exactly $17.60 to live on. $5.86 per person for the next week.